Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I've got a really good tip for you today regarding something I learned one of my first couple of years fishing at the professional level from a very well-established pro, and it had to do with fishing current or days where there was a lack of current. So maybe you fished the Tennessee River Lake or the lake that you fish on, they were not generating current, so there was very little current that was flowing through the lake. Or this also relates to the days where you have some current, but you've got a good strong wind blowing against the current, which basically brings the current down to a standstill. This is a tip that has really saved me on a lot of days and allowed me to catch a lot of fish when on other days it probably would have been a pretty tough fishing day because honestly, when you're fishing a lake that has relatively good current flow through it, a lot of times the fish use that current to be their primary feeding times. And therefore, when there is no current, the bite can be off dramatically. So if you use this tip, I'm going to assure you that you'll catch a few extra fish. Before I get into what the details are, I do want to remind you if you want to support the channel, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link. Also, guys, if you want more content from me, check out my members only page. We do live streams. We do extra videos on a monthly basis, so you can check both those out in my video description. All right, so let's go back to my original story that led up to this. So one of the first couple of years I fished, I was fishing an event on Kentucky Lake, and we had zero current. There was very little current flow. They were not generating current at the dams. And on Kentucky Lake, we had a north wind. So on Kentucky Lake, the current flows from south to north. We not only had very little current flow based on the dam generation, we also had a north wind. So what was happening was we were having pretty much a stagnant current flow, meaning there was no current at all. It was a ledge tournament. I struggled mightily in that event. I had a great practice. Tournament came around. They didn't draw any current. I was shot. I was spun out. Didn't know what to do. It was one of the first times I'd ever fished a ledge lake. I think it was the second ledge lake I had ever fished. And I remember talking with one of the locals that fished that event, a very good fisherman, doesn't fish anymore, but has a great track record on the TVA lakes. And one of the things that he told me was a very simple way to combat the lack of current. He said, if you fish in a lake that has current flow, but there's no current on that day, try to identify the pinch points on the lake and almost always look to fish bridges. And I thought to myself, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, at that point, you're still looking for areas with current. If you're fishing a pinch point or you're fishing where there's a bridge, which basically means there probably is a pinch point there, the reasoning behind this, though, is that those pinch points are going to be one of the few places where there still is current. Those bottlenecks on the lake are going to be your high percentage areas for the little bit of current that is still existing on those lakes. But that's not the only reason why. The second main reason to this is not only is there potential to still find current at those bridges or pinch points, it's also because if you're talking about bridges, you've got fish that live around those bridges no matter what. And a lot of times, what happens in times when there is no current is those fish will suspend a little bit more. They'll get higher up, they'll get around some of those pilings and wait for the fish to come to them. So not only do you have areas where there still might be some current, you've also got areas where you know the fish live, and you've got fish that are in that general area. All you have to do at that point is recognize the fact that because there's less current, you probably have fish suspended up higher in the water column, and you got to make a little bit of a bait adjustment at this point. You're going to want to go with baits that are much more uh, shad based or baits that are going to mimic the forage species. So you're going to be talking about some of your swim baits like this hollow belly right here. You're going to be talking about maybe some flukes or other dying bait fish baits like this core tackle hover rig. One of my other favorites for this time period is to throw a spy bait. And last but not least, you're almost always going to have some fish that are relating to some of those bridge pilings or the riprap that's on the points that are the start of that pinch where the bridge goes over. And at that point, a lot of times a little Ned rig is going to be one of your main go-to baits. But what you need to recognize is during these time periods, there is going to be significantly less of a feeding window. There's going to be significantly less current. Those fish are still going to be in that area, but a lot of times they come up off the bottom and still relate to those bridge pilings. They just won't be as tight as they normally are. If you use these tips on those tough days of fishing, it will lead to you catching a few extra fish. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, guys, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, new video coming out tomorrow.